All right, in this video, I want to show you some of the key features about Zoom. And unfortunately, I can't run a meeting with real students for privacy reasons. So we'll just do our best here to follow along. First, on the very top left, you have access to the Zoom link for the meeting, which you can copy and send it to anybody who needs it. You also have the option here to switch the microphone that you are using and also to switch on original sound. Now, original sound, when it's on, it will not limit the intelligent software that tries to block background noise. If you're trying to like play music through students or something like that, not share through your computer, but just like that's playing in the background of your house, you should turn that on. This will make it so they can actually hear all of it. Otherwise, the Zoom tries to focus on voices, and that limits some of the sound. So it's some intelligent software that it has. Here you have some controls over recordings. You can stop, pause the recording, even start it when it's not on. Notice that you can also switch the camera if you have more than one camera. You can blur your black background if you don't want people to see what's going on, and you can switch even your background and uh, put yourself in not a space, and you can download some extra ones. There's some filters you can do. That all depends if those are enabled on your settings. While we're here in the settings, I want to show you a couple of other things that is kind of cool. Uh, there are features that you can change if you're using dual monitors that you might want to try experiment with. What that does is it changes the way that Zoom presents itself, especially when you're sharing a screen. Um, you can also automatically enter full screen when joining a meeting if you always like to have Zoom be in full screen. You can activate so the meeting controls never go away. I tend to like that one because sometimes I don't want to know. I don't know what my controls are, and it annoys me. It also has a cool new feature which allows you to activate emojis based on hand gesture recognition. So that's pretty cool. Now, if you click on more settings, that will open the Zoom website where you can see Zoom settings, and we'll go into that in a different video. But let's just keep going with this. Here on the video, you can change whether you're transmitting HD or not. And if you're struggling with your connection, that's one thing you can do. You can shut off the high definition video. Sometimes I do that. You can change it if your video is mirrored or not. And that's usually helpful if you're trying to show some writing on the screen and you're mirrored, and that would not work out. If you don't like the way you look, you can even touch up your appearance, and it will actually smooth the camera, smooth you on cameras, which is kind of interesting. A lot of intelligent software that you can actually use. You can take on or off this participants' names from their videos. You can set it up so that your video is always off when you join a meeting, so you want to slightly turn it on when you're not expecting it. And you can also always show a preview of what it's going to look like before you get in. And I have that off because I don't want to go through that opening screen. So on audio features, the one I would like to show you is that you can actually use a separate audio device to play ringtones. So if you have a headset or something like that that you're connected to, you can have the rings of people coming in and out of the room be going one way, and have other things be going another way. And that's really helpful so that people don't hear that dinging happen on your screen. But again, if you have original sound off, it shouldn't pick up that on your microphone. And this is where the original sound is being adjusted, right? So if you leave it automatic, it's going to block some things. If you leave it in high, it will block everything, like dog barks, typing, but accidentally might block some sounds that you don't want to block. So that's kind of interesting as well. There is options here though where you can turn on the original sound. If you have that option activated, then you see that. If I take that off, then the original sound option goes away. But I do like to leave it because that way you can actually share high fidelity music, right? And have some echo cancellation in case that somebody talks and people still won't hear you on the background. There are some options here on how you can change your screen. Some people like to go full screen mode when they're sharing. Some people like to go automatically maximize. I just like to leave it uh, to not change the settings when I'm starting to share. But you can make it automatic so that when it shares, it changes into a certain mode. Um, and then also that when people are sharing a screen, that it automatically fits the content to the Zoom window. So when screens are being shared, um, you can change that. And I'll show you that in a second as well. You can enable remote control of all applications. This is really cool. This allows other people to access your computer through Zoom. And if you allow this, you can actually have somebody remote control your computer. Side by side mode is kind of cool too, and that's when you're sharing a screen, it will have the Zoom on one side here, and then the rest of the screen on the other. Doesn't really matter if you're sharing if you have multiple screens set up. I also like silencing system notifications when sharing, so that means if there is something on the screen, it wouldn't pop up in front of your sharing, which is pretty cool. Um, you can choose to share an individual window of the application or all windows when you share the application. You can automatically decide to share all the desktop, the entire desktop, or share, ask them to show each time what you're going to share, which is what I have because I have lots of screens going on and I want to make sure I can pick which one I want that to happen. On the chat, this is actually the Zoom chat, not the meeting chat. So there's nothing really here that is super important for what we do. Again, you can have background effects. This is where you set up the recording. If you're recording locally, it would show you the folder where your recordings are going to be saved. And if you're recording on the cloud, that won't really matter. You can actually also choose to record the audio file separate for each participant. And that's kind of pretty cool because if each participant talks, you can actually save just what that person says. I don't normally do that because then you have lots of different files that generates every time you record it. It's just a little bit too much. You can also disable the participant names in the recording, which is kind of nice too. I like to leave that off because for privacy reasons, so that I can actually share the recording sometimes if I need to, especially if there's no students in the screen. You can have cloud recordings, which is actually how I have mine. And you can actually have a setup so that every time the recording is ready to be shared, it sends you a notification. And I like that because I like to save sometimes aspects of the recording. Now, the way I set up my recording, you can actually pull just the teacher screen or the shared screen, and none of the students show up on the recording, which is really, really cool. And that's kind of how I save some of my classes. And then I can share that with someone that hasn't come to class or something like that. And so those are some of the really, really awesome. Now, I wanted to show you too that there's actually a lot of shortcuts that you can actually use. And these shortcuts can be very useful, especially if you're if the kind of things that you use all the time. This is in particular to show the meeting control. If you hit Alt, if you lost the controls, you can hit Alt and that will come back. And if you want to change the focus back to the controls, you can do Control Alt Shift and then the controls will show back up. But again, there's a button to automatically start and stop screen sharing, which is Alt S. I really like that one. There is a option to switch camera if you have more than one camera set up, and I do. I have two cameras so that I can actually show some documents on the document cam. So that's kind of how I have that. There's shortcuts to raise or lower your hand, like Alt Y will do that. I also use this one a lot too, which is Alt U. When you click on that, it automatically shows the participant panel. So you can see it on the right side, all the people who are in the meeting. Alt H is also very useful. It makes the chat pop in and out. Very, very useful as well. So these are just some of the things that you can use that are really, really awesome. Okay, so those are the general settings for the meeting, and you can access that again from a lot of different places. I got into video settings, and then that shows all the settings, right? But you can do it from a lot of different places. You can also change the speaker that Zoom is using to talk to you. You can change which camera you're using. So here I have the camera that's on the laptop, then I have my other camera that's up there. So you can switch the cameras if you have a different one. All right, so I'll stop the video here just to save my bandwidth. Next, I want to talk about security settings. Okay, so now if you lock the meeting, no one else can come in and out. If you enable the waiting room, people coming in have to go through a step where you have to allow them into the room. As you can see, I have my settings set up so they automatically doesn't have a waiting room, so I don't have to approve people coming in because the district already has a method to restrict who's coming in. So as long as you're using that, there's really no reason to have a waiting room. But sometimes I might want to put somebody outside of the room of the meeting, and you can send them to a waiting room at any point, even if there's no one there. So I'm going to do that with Dewey Hafta right now. right? So you can see that you can actually click on that setting and put it in the waiting room. So now they went to the waiting room, even though the waiting room wasn't activated before, right? So that's kind of cool. So now if I open the participant screen, which is like the out view, I can see that he's in the waiting room, and I can go ahead and admit him back into the room. And that's kind of how the waiting room looks like. So it's a really quick way to just boot someone that's causing trouble. I don't particularly like doing that, to be completely honest. It feels kind of disrespectful to the students to do that. But if they're causing trouble and you need to get them out, that is the fastest way to do it. You can just put them in the waiting room immediately, and they just go away, right? And then you can just admit them back when you're ready. Usually, what I will do is I'll open a breakout room and add them to the breakout room as soon as they come in, so that I can talk about it. This I also want to point out that from the participant screen, since we're in there, actually let me keep going in order, otherwise I'll forget things. So this is where you can change whether you allow participants to share their screens, to rename themselves, to unmute themselves or not. So you can literally disable that. So if you want everybody to not be able to talk right now, you can turn that off, and now nobody can talk except you, right? And you can also turn off their videos. You can also enable them to share their whiteboards or not. So this is all really, really cool things. And you can remove a participant too if you want to. But if you do that, if I kick Dewey, he won't be able to get back. And so not during this session. It actually depends on which way you have that set up. But I'm not going to do it right now, because if I do that, I'm not going to get him back. So now let's talk about the participant screen. So in the participant screen, you see the whole list of people who are in the meeting. You can actually ask to unmute. And if you do that, the person gets a hit on their screen that says unmute. Let me show you that. So here's do you have to screen. When I click that, it says, yeah, sure, unmute. And now the sound from do you have to is coming in, right? It's really cool that you can have the ability to do that at any given time, and basically tell the student, okay, it's your turn to participate here. So it's an extra layer of like, let's talk about this. Now, a lot of the features that you can do here, you can also do from the participant button menu that's right next to them. So you have the ask to unmute right there. You also can ask them to start video, and that sends a bump to him that says start my video. So if their cameras are off, you can send them a prompt to start their video. And if they click on that, right, then their video will start. And you see, that worked there. I'm going to go ahead and shut that off again to save my bandwidth. I really like that feature, and a lot of people don't know that it's there. You can also hit chat, and now you are sending them a private message. It automatically changes the chat to a private message to that student. You can also activate this option, and then the people who don't have videos just kind of go away, right? And if you do that, then you no longer see the people who have their videos off. And I never really do that, because I want to be able to see all my students, especially if they have their videos off. So I'm going to go ahead and try to turn on the video back on here. So now I can see the student back. All right, so I'm going to go back to gallery, and I'll activate my video here as well, so we can see both of them. So I just missed Lima twice. Okay, so under participants, so Dewey is on the left, don't forget that. You can actually assign a person to type closed captions. So this would be a person that would actually help the rest of the class to follow along and see what the teacher is saying. That's a feature that's pretty cool. But I'm also going to show you later that you can activate auto transcript also. It's a really, really cool thing. From here, you can also make the person the host or the co-host. You can rename them. Allowing to multi-pan, it just means that sometimes you want to be able to allow more than one person to do that. And if you do that, that person will become pinned on the main conversation. So that's kind of what that is. Go back to full screen mode here. The next thing I want to show you is you can also boot the person from right here. And again, most of these features show up in both places, right? There's actually more features in the video of the person than there is here, but it's mostly the same thing. Also in the participant, you can hit here to actually invite someone. And if you do that, you can type from your contacts, or you can send them an email on the spot, and actually will send an invitation to them. You can also copy the meeting invite and now it's saved on the clipboard, and you can send that to the person directly, or you can even send just the meeting link by copying it from the shield like I showed you before. What else? From here, you can also hit a button that will literally ask everybody to unmute at once. And that's kind of rough for class time, but sometimes it can be useful. You can also change whether you allow the participants to rename themselves, unmute themselves. You can turn off the sound that plays when people come in and out. And I always have that on because I want to notice that people are coming in and out. And again, enable the meeting room or lock the meeting. So some of the features show up in more than one place. All right, so polls. Let's talk about polls. You can create a poll to send, but when you do that, it actually opens a web page for you to create the poll. So it will go inside the meeting. And so the best way to make polls is to create them ahead of time. Now you can also do some advanced polling and quizzing, but polls are pretty cool. So you can actually create a question like, say, for example, is Mr. Lima awesome? And right, so that's your poll. Is Mr. Lima awesome? A lot of times I create this on the fly. So choice one would be yes. Choice two would be definitely, right? And there you go. And you can add more questions and turn this whole thing into a quiz. Now that a poll is saved, and I have a poll in my thing. And by the way, you can create polls that get saved in that meeting, so you can use it again and again if you need to. But now that I have a poll created, I can actually pull that poll and send it to people. I say launch. And then what happens on the student side is that they get that poll, and when they say yes and submit, they will actually, you will start seeing on your screen how many people answer the poll that way. Great way to do a check for understanding during class. So strongly recommend using polls, right? And again, you have to create the polls. You can create them on the spot, but you can also create them ahead of time. And you can end the poll at any point by just hitting this button. And then if you want to share the results, you hit share results. And then from the student side, it will actually show the results of the poll. Really love that tool. I use it all the time. And you can stop sharing when you're done. Create a new poll if you have to. Polls are absolutely awesome. Okay, let's talk about the chat next. Now on the chat, right, and I'm going to turn off participants so that doesn't get split with the chat. If you open participants and chat at the same time, they kind of split the sidebar. So sometimes I turn off the participants when I want to use the chat. Now I don't usually use the Zoom chat for students to get help from me, to get my attention. I ask them to use GoGuardian because that sends me a notification on my screen that lets me know that they are trying to get my attention. But use the chat still for students to participate during class, for them to do exit tickets or entrance tickets, for them to answer questions. If I ask one student a question, I ask everybody else to answer in private. If I ask a student a question, they can answer it either verbally or on the chat if they're quick. So those are all options that you have. Now, from here, you can actually do emojis on the chat. A lot of people don't realize that there's emojis that they can use, right? And there's also the ability to actually link a file from Google Drive. So if you do that, it will again open a screen on your computer where it will ask you, first of all, you have to have your drive connected. So if you haven't done that before, you have to allow Google Drive to have access to this so that it can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and permit that. It's been my first time doing that. I just log in with my district account. And now that I have access to the drive, it takes so many screens just to get to the permission through. The cool thing is that now I can see my entire drive. So say, for example, I wanted to send something like the notes that I have here on Zoom, and I can change the settings right now too about sharing on the spot. So if they were not shared properly, right, I can change them on the spot so that the people that I want them to open can open it. So that I do that, and then it sends that to everybody in the meeting. It's pretty cool. Now, I don't actually use that feature very much. And the reason is because I can just use GoGuardian to send them a direct link to the file, and it's a lot easier than using Zoom. But it is still a pretty cool feature that people don't realize is there. Also in here, there's a menu button, and this is actually pretty important. From here, you can save your chat, and I have in mind saving automatically at every meeting. And I'll show you in the next video that talks about the Zoom settings outside the meeting, how you can set that up. But this is actually pretty important. If you want to shut down the chat completely so people aren't messaging you through the chat when you really want them to message you through GoGuardian, or it's not really time to be talking, you can turn it off so that no one can chat. If you put host and co-host, they can still chat, but only to you. And if you put everyone, they can send messages to everybody, but not privately, individually. If you put everyone and anyone directly, they will be able to send messages to each other in private, and you won't be able to know that that's happening. Obviously, that's probably a bad idea in most circumstances in class, but there could be situations where you might want to use that. Right? I've done some fish tank activities where there's a discussion happening, and the people are talking about the discussion outside of discussion, and sometimes I need to have uh, a moderator talk to another person in private, and I need to activate that in order for that to happen. So it's a way for kids to chat with each other in private if they need to. So it depends on the activity that you're doing. Again, here are meeting controls where you can pause and stop the recording, which you can also do from up there. This is another awesome thing, which is live transcript. So on the live transcript, what it does is two options. You can assign someone to type. You can type as you talk, or you can enable, this is new, auto transcription. I love this. This is a brand new tool that has been added. So when that is activated, all right, let me make sure that's on. So it's on right now. So I'll show you, do we have this side here? And when I click on that and I say show subtitles, now that the transcription is on, it should show in their screen when it comes in. And you can also see the full transcript if it's being translated. But right now, for some reason, of course, I'm trying to demonstrate it. It's not actually working. Oh, it's because I'm muted. That makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's try it again. I'm just going to unmute. If you're muted, it's not going to pick up what you're saying, right? And there it is. It's automatically transcribing everything that you're saying. And if they click on the full transcript, they can see that, and it's pretty good. If you talk slowly enough, and even if you talk fast, because I am a pretty fast speaker sometimes, it can still do a pretty good job. It's pretty impressive. All right. And I cannot stress enough that this should always be on in your class so that kids can actually follow along with what you're saying and have a transcript of the actual lesson that they can follow along when you're teaching. If you aren't using that tool, oh my gosh, you totally need to use that tool. All right. Okay. So I'm going to mute myself here again. Breakout rooms. Let's talk about breakout rooms. So breakout rooms are also a very awesome tool. Now you can create a different number of breakout rooms depending on how many groups you want to create. And you can pre-create breakout rooms on the meeting settings. And I'll probably have a different video where I explain how to do that. Now you can assign it automatically. And if you do that, when it sends the students, it will automatically put them in breakout rooms. So let's go ahead and do that. See how it automatically put Dewey on breakout room number 1, right? So that's one thing that you can do. Well, I'm going to recreate because I want to do something different. And that's this time I'm going to assign manually. If you do it that way, then they stay in the main room until you assign them. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to open the rooms. They're unassigned, and then I can click assign to and send them to the room that I want them to be. Now in Dewey's side of the screen, it shows that he's being invited to join the room. And he can say not now, or he can join. And if he says join, obviously, he's going to be transferred to the breakout room. It's really cool too that now there's the ability to actually monitor people while they're in the breakout room, and so they get a warning that that's the case. And in fact, you can actually see I can see that he's muted in there and that his camera is on. Now, if he shuts down his camera, there you go. You see how it shows that his camera now is off, right? I'm going to go ahead and unmute over there, and you can see that he's talking now. So you can see if students are actually having conversations because, well, at least if they're unmuted from this screen. It's pretty cool. And you can move them to a different room if you want to, and then they just jump. Now, when they're moved, and I'll show you that on their side as well, they don't really get a choice. They just get moved and jump. So, right? So I move them, and you immediately change the rooms there. So that's kind of different. Let me split my screen here so that actually you can see both things going on at the same time. I'll try to do that. Should have done that from the start, but okay. So on the right side, I have mine. On the left side, I have the student, right? So I'm going to send a broadcast now. So we have broadcast. Now I can broadcast my voice. So I'm going to try to do that. So when there is a breakout room open, all you have to do to broadcast into the breakout rooms, if you are from the main room, is make sure you are selected on the Zoom meeting. So I click on it and then hold B, and it will send the audio to the other room. Now this is going to cause some reverberation. It's just to prove that it works because the other account is there at the same time. Right, so this is me talking to the other room. Right, so I'm going to mute the side so that doesn't happen again. But while you're holding B, now it's actually broadcasting to all the rooms. So you can do that. And you can also do that from the breakout room screen. You can go to broadcast, and so broadcast voice, and make sure you hold that B, and now it's broadcasting to all the rooms. That's kind of how you do. Just hold the B button, and now you're talking to all the rooms at once. Like, oh, I'm seeing that all the microphones are muted. You're supposed to be having a conversation, guys. That's how you broadcast to other rooms. You can also broadcast a message, and you can say something like 5 minutes left, right, for them to talk. And then everybody gets that message popped into their screen. Pretty cool stuff. And you can also go within the rooms. There's also a button that says participants. And in this one, it shows everybody. And the reason why you want to use this, especially if you have a large meeting, is it's easier to find them here than it is to find them in the room screen, because this shows them all in alphabetical order versus here, it shows them where they are. So it's kind of sometimes you have to scroll through all the rooms to figure out where they are, and that's kind of like a hassle. All right, so we turn off the chat so I can show more. Back to full screen. So breakout rooms, still not done with this. When you close the rooms, there's going to be a timer that's going to show up on the other side. So let me actually show that from the student's side also, right? So I'm going to close all the rooms, and now they're getting a message that it's going to close it in 5 seconds, but they can return immediately as soon as they come. Now, why was it 10 seconds? Why was it that? So now that the room is closed, everybody's returning to the main room, right? Now, that's because when you go to options, you can change the countdown timer. Now, sometimes I use larger times because I want to give people time to wrap up their discussions. But if I'm just doing like some work group or something like that, and I want to bring them up right away, I just leave 10 seconds. And honestly, what I would usually do is leave it at 10 seconds and just use the broadcast to warn people that I'm going to close it in a certain amount of time. You can also set it up so the rooms automatically close after a certain amount of time. And that's kind of cool because you can get a notification that the time's about to run out. And if you do it that way, when you open the rooms, there's a timer that goes off to give people an indication. This is how long I have to do this activity. So definitely useful. So let's show you that. By the way, if you hit open rooms again, the same rooms get recreated, right? So let's do that. So you see Dewey is returning to room 5, which is where they were before. But this time I have an automatic timer running. So that means in the top right-hand corner of the screen, there's a timer running showing how long they have left. So I definitely use that sometimes. And this is the screen you get if you have that setting activated to be warned at the end of the 5 minutes. Instead of the rooms automatically closing, when the timer runs out, you get this message on your screen as a host. And then you can choose whether to give the people more time and keep it open or close it. Now, if you decide to keep it open, you have to then go back to the breakout. Now, again, if you have broadcast voice activated, right, you can talk to all the breakout rooms from the main room if you do that. One more thing with breakout rooms, okay, which is, so I'm going to close them again. If you want to create a different set of breakout rooms, you need to hit recreate. Otherwise, every time you open it, you're going to open the same set you did last time. So if you can add a room when they're closed, but you cannot add a room when they're open, right? So if I open the rooms, which is I just did, I don't get a choice to actually create a room. But if you are in a screen before you actually open, you can create an extra room. If you hit recreate, you go back to the main screen when you choose things. There is an option, by the way, where you can let kids choose the room. And that's a pretty cool option. I use that if I'm trying to like have different, let's say for example, I'm differentiating, and so like the first room is for people who are going to watch the videos. The second room, people are working together on an activity. The third room, people are reading the textbook, and the kids will just self-assign themselves based on what they're doing. And this is kind of cool because you can create a way to check what kind of assignment they're doing, right? So maybe you do this as a textbook, so they're reading the textbook, and I like to give my kids choices of how they are learning. So these ones are doing the video, these ones are working together on a Poggle collaboratively, right? And so when I open that, right, the kids will choose a room based on what they're working on. Um, and they have an option to do that. Now, if they don't choose a room, they stay in the main room, and that's okay too, right? So we're going to close them again. And notice you have to wait. You don't have to wait if there's no one inside the rooms. That's the other thing that's cool. But if there's people inside, the timer, the 10-second goes around. You can automatically choose to move all participants into breakout rooms when you open it, and that makes more sense when you are pre-assigning them as well. So these are all great options for breakout rooms. Now, I might record a different video and more times that gives you more hints on how to use them. A lot of times when I'm just in normal class, I will have a breakout room open, which I call support, and I will log in twice and have myself in the main room of all students, and then also be in the support room to help a couple of students. And they can choice themselves there, or I'll move them there. That's one of the main ways I use it. I use it during discussions to set up shoulder partners. I use it to differentiate so they can tell me what kind of assignment they're working on. I use it for group work and all kinds of things like that. So lots of creative ways you can use breakout rooms. There's plenty of videos on the internet to give you ideas. So there you go. That's breakout rooms. Next, let's talk about reactions. Now, reactions is big, okay? There's lots of awesome reactions that you can pick from. Now, the reactions on the first row all disappear. And any of the extra reactions, which are basically emojis, they have a different kind of thing. And notice, by the way, you can tell students they can change their skin tone, which is kind of cool, right? Now, if you put this reaction, right, you'll notice that after a little while, it's going to disappear. And I'm going to do the same thing from Dewey's side. So let me go back to the split screen here. And they're going to do reactions over here. And notice, of course, the participants have a lot less tools. But look, my reaction already disappeared, right? So he's going to put a party reaction. I'm going to see the party reaction. But that reaction is not going to last. So the reactions in the top don't last. But this reaction is pretty cool. This is the I'm away reaction. So I tell my students to put that if they are going to the bathroom or they're not on the computer. A lot of times they feel like they need to tell me, I'll be right back. And I'm like, don't tell me to be right back. Just use the reaction. And you can tell me. That way I don't have to like interact with that message. These are my favorite ones, though. I like to use the green check mark for students to confirm they have completed something that I told them to complete. And by the way, they can remove the reaction by clicking on it again, or by going back to reactions and clicking at it one more time. That will make it go away. A red reaction I use for if they're still working on an activity that I assigned, or if I actually ask a question and they're voting with no. And those reactions are different. They actually stay. If I'm going too fast doing a discussion or a lecture, they can slow down. They can ask me to slow down, and that tells me, so if you're going too fast, I can't keep up. If I'm going too slow and they kind of got it already, they can ask me to speed up, right? And that I like to use those reactions during class discussions or doing a seminar or lectures or something like that. But I also want to show you how I use reactions to actually help students communicate with me about what they're working on during practice time, right? So this, I'm going to share my screen so that you can actually see this on the meeting. So this is what the students will see, right? And this is my splash screen that is there at the beginning of class. And so it will say, do now that they have to do when they come in, like a connection question that I always ask for them to do attendance. But look at here at the left side, right? So I have a set of reactions, and it says, if you're stuck, put the slow down reaction and send your teacher a message on Go Guardian. And they're trained to do that if they don't know what they're doing. And then I will come to their rescue as soon as I have a chance. If they're following along, right, or for example, let's say they're doing an activity and they are working, so they're working on today's working on study guide, let's say, right? And so that informs me that they're still working on it. But let's say they finished the study guide, so they will write finish working on practice. Now I know that the students who switch to green are already done with the study guide and they're working on the practice assignment instead. All right. And then blue maybe means done, even with the practice. And then I will say something like PM teacher. That's for like basically say, if you're done with everything, ask your teacher what you need to do. Right. And so I will use those reactions as a means to for students to communicate with me about where they are right now with the material. So this can be an indicator, and the reactions will stay. That's why I prefer those, and that's why I use those as they're stable reactions. All of those in the bottom row will do that. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can use those reactions in order to communicate with your students. Now I got a Mr. Lima crowd going because I really wanted to have a chance to show you guys some of the settings about visualization on the right side. If you have speaker mode on, whoever's talking, which is Mr. Lima, which is surely awesome, um, uh, is the one that's actually on the screen. But the host can spotlight someone for everybody else. So you can actually see that on the left side, you can see a student view, and you can see that the speaker is actually there, right? The speaker, whoever's talking, is actually there. So let's see if I can change that. I'm going to unmute on my phone. So now that I started talking, it automatically switches speaker view. And the students have the ability to switch that as well. They can go to gallery view if they want to as well, and they would see everybody. Unless you do something cool with this called focus mode. And that's usually under the more here on the right side. If you turn on focus mode, they can only see hosts, right? So they can't see the other ones because only hosts are visible. Everybody else shows up with the camera off. So the main person can see everybody, right? But they can only see the hosts and themselves, right? So the left, Shirley Awesome here is on the left side. So we can Shirley can see herself or himself. I'm so confused. Multiple personalities or what is going on here. But they can see the hosts. One host is me from the main screen on the top left, and then me from the phone, which is also a host. So if there's more than one host, they can see both hosts. But the other students, even though their cameras are on, Vittori and Dewey Hafta, which are also in the room with the cameras on, cannot be seen by the other students. If I turn off the focus mode, so we'll see what that does. It will take you a second for that to come through, but they should be able to see the other students once focus mode is off. There you go. So now the students can see their classmates. But when focus mode is turned on, they can only see hosts. And actually, when you first turn on focus mode, it gets off gallery view automatically and goes to speaker view for whoever is there. And the other people just show up on top with black screens. No one, they can't see the other ones. And that's kind of cool when you're not having a discussion and you don't want the students to be distracted by each other, or maybe there's a shy student, right? And when that's the case, that's and I usually have that automatically starting, and you can have that set up on your settings so that when your meeting starts, it automatically starts in focus mode. That's in the meeting settings when you schedule a meeting, that you set that up. If you don't, you can come here and start and stop it under more. I also want to show you that as a host, you have the ability to spotlight someone. So I'm going to try to do that. So I'm going to put Victory on the spotlight. Right now, when I did that, even though we are on focus mode, because Victory has been put on the spotlight, we all can see Victory, right now. And I can add another person to the spotlight to do we have to. And now that do we have to is also in the spotlight, Dewey also shows up. And I can remove the spotlight from that person. So there goes Victory, and there goes do we have to. And now we're back just to the host, and everybody else can't be seen. And whoever's the speaker is going to be the one that's going to stay in the main screen because they're speaking, so they're the ones that show up for the host. If the co-host starts speaking, it might switch to that other co-host. Okay, so you can also pin someone, which is different, and we're on the focus mode right now. Only the host or yourself are visible, and I'm going to go ahead and pin Victory and see what happens. That's going to remove all spotlight videos for everybody. So let's try to do that. So when I do that, that's a little different from a spotlight. When I pin Victory, that means it changes the view for myself, but not necessarily for everybody else. So you see that does not change there on the others, right? So pinning, it just puts that person at the front of your view. It will put them at the start, especially if you have a lot of students. That person will be so that you will always see that person. Um, versus spotlight is when you, as the host, kind of pin it for others. Even if it's on the focus mode, they will see that person, right? It's pinned right now, and they still can't see Victory because the pin only affects you, while spotlights affect everybody else. And you can remove the pin either by going up here to the person that's on pin and remove it. So that's spotlighting and pinning, and they're slightly different things. All right, I got rid of some of the extra people so that we can focus on showing some screen sharing options now. When you click on share, generally this will show up. The only time it doesn't show up is if you went to settings and under screen share, you said automatically share the desktop. So if you did that, when you hit share, it will just share your entire desktop, right? Which doesn't really make a lot of sense when you have multiple screens because you might want to share a specific screen, not just your main screen, which is what happens if you do that. By the way, notice that when you are sharing, people can change their view to show the speaker next to the sharing or above, or just the standard one where the speaker goes up there. So when you are sharing, they are able to see themselves, right? So I'll activate Shirley here so you can see that. They are able to see themselves and the speaker plus the screen, and they can change that to make a side by side if they want to. But that's how it looks like for them when you are sharing. Now, if you want to be able to choose what you're sharing because you have multiple screens, make sure that when you go to sharing, you actually put show all sharing options. Uh, and the same thing is true when you're sharing to a Zoom room, because if you have a breakout room, you can share into a breakout room. You can also change what happens when you start sharing. Um, I like to leave it as maintain screen size. Some people just change it so that it goes full screen or something else like that. And you can also have the ability to share all the windows from one application when you share, or just an individual window, which is what I tend to prefer as well. There are advanced sharing options as well that show a green border around the share content. I actually try to turn that off most of the time. You can limit the frame rate of your sharing if you want to, if you're having a lag problem with your internet. Um, and you can, I usually have this uh, on so that it optimizes your screen sharing for video and uses more of your computer power when you're sharing so that it looks better for the people who are receiving the share. And that's pretty important. So let me redo that share. This time now it's going to ask me to share. And notice that when I share this time, it's still sharing that main screen. Now, I can also go to advanced and I can share just a portion of the screen. So let's show you how that looks like, right? So it's sharing just a section of the screen that I chose, right? So if I come over here, right, it will share just that part of the screen. I'm going to share just my controls up there, for example. But sometimes that can be useful if you want to share just a section of a screen when you don't have a lot of things. You can also share just your audio, and then you send just the music, and you can do it in high fidelity. or just mono style. This is actually pretty cool. You can share a PowerPoint presentation as your background, but in order to do that, you have to have a PowerPoint ready to go. So what happens is that if you do that, then you become part of the presentation. And the virtual background, it's like just like, when you go out into outer space like that, right? Except instead of the background being space, it would actually be your presentation. So you're part of your presentation, and you're sharing and you're pointing at things like as if you are in the presentation. So that's pretty cool, and it's really creative. Kids like when that kind of stuff happens. So feel free to play with that. You can also share a video, right? So if you do that, you have to have the video on your computer in order for this to work. So let's see if I can find one here that I can do. This is from last year, right? So if you do that, the video that you're sharing shows up on your screen like that. And when you press play, it will also play for the other people, right? Of course, there is a lag on that process, and the quality of the video is not necessarily going to be great, but you can share a video directly from your screen doing this method. It's pretty cool. All right. You can also share content from a second camera if you have a overhead camera, and I do have that to do. So you can do that as well if you have that set up. You can share a file using Google Drive. If you click on that, the first time you do it, you're gonna have to set permissions, but then you can just choose a file from your Google Drive, and that will send the file to the people in the room. So your Google Drive will show up. You pick your file, and then you share, and that shows up on their screen as well. Another thing that I want to show you is that you can optimize for video when you are sharing video. So earlier when I was sharing that video, it would have worked a lot better if I had those options on. And actually, when you optimize for video, generally it automatically pulls the sound too, because it wants to make sure that the video there. And you can change the sound to high fidelity sound, so it sounds better for the recipients. So now it's going to share my screen along with my sound, right? And if I do it here, if there's a video that's playing, it's going to be optimized so it does it better. So let's show you that by playing that video again. So it does improve a little bit the quality of the video. And you may have noticed that it lags less compared to what was happening before. And of course, I have this muted, so there's no reverberation coming when doing the recording here. So when you are sharing your screen and you're going to play a video, or you want a sound to come through, make sure that those options are activated. Now, the other thing I want to show you is that if you go to the little arrow up here, you can change who gets to share. Right now, it's set up for one participant at a time, but if you have multiple people logged in from an app, you can actually activate so that more than one person can share at once. That doesn't make sense right now because all the students that I have logged in are logged in through the browser and they don't have the app. So, but if I had another host that was from the app, then the option to share would actually become available. Then with multiple people. So 2 people could share at once if you have 2 teachers co-teaching the class. And you can make it so that only the host can share. And if that's the case and people try to share, they're going to get an error like that. But you can also activate so that all participants can share. And then it should work. But make sure you stop focus mode before you do this. Because if focus mode is on and somebody tries to share something, nobody can see it. Because remember, focus mode makes it so that only the host is visible, including the things that are being shared, right? So you need to turn off focus mode completely before a different person is allowed to do it. And you can actually go to your sharing settings and say all participants are allowed to share. Now, even if our participants are allowed to share, you can change whether or not they're allowed to take over the sharing or not. And I usually have that off so that only the hosts can take over other hosts. Right? If you have this on, even if you are sharing, the participants will be able to take over. So I usually have that off. But now that it's on, they actually can share their screen, which is of course the same thing as my screen. And they can also share with audio. They can also share parts of their window or just one of the tabs that they have open as well. So the sharing of the browser is not as smooth, but it works just the same. But you do have to make sure you activate that before you allow them to share. And remember, this little button is the one you have to click on to change who can share and whatnot. So I'm going to actually show you how they can take over because that's kind of pretty serious. So I'm going to go basic here. I'm going to share my screen. It's going to be on the main screen. But because I have that on, right, they can actually take over. And it says this will stop the other screen shares. Do you want to continue? Right? And then they can actually take over your sharing. And now they're sharing. So that's why you have to be careful with that setting. I usually leave it off. Now, when someone is sharing, and I'm going to show that. So I'm going to do over here. Maybe I'll have them share the screen here. What it looks for you is a little different. Over here at the top, you can now change the way it looks for you, right? And I'm going to show you this in full screen, so it makes a little more sense. You can change so that the sharing only takes some of your space, or it takes extra space if the thing that they're showing is too tiny. So you can literally zoom in on what they're sharing, and you can move around. And it's a good thing to show the students as well that shows up at the top of your screen, because if they're sharing something and you can barely see it, that's just something that you can do to see better. I usually have it on fit to window though, so it fits like about the window where I do it. And you can exit full screen from here as well, and you can deactivate side by side mode. So if you do that, this is really cool. It detaches the zoom from the share. So now you can actually pull that to another screen and have one screen just focus on the sharing where you can see the rest of the people in another tab, which is really cool. If you have the side by side mode, which is the standard, this is what's going to happen. And again, you can change that from the settings, whether or not you want the side by side mode to be the standard that actually happens. So if you like being able to have a full screen of what's being shared and still see everybody on Zoom in a different place, just deactivate that setting or deactivate it here when you want that to happen. When a participant is sharing, you can actually stop them from sharing, and that's pretty important. And you do that either by taking over the sharing or by up here again. You can say stop participant sharing, and that will shut down that sharing that was done. So that was a pretty cool features that you can do. And by the way, when someone is sharing, and I'll do that one more time, right? You can also change your view to the same way they could, right? To put the speakers on top, the speaker on the side, or again, you can go full screen, at which point you can deactivate the side-by-side mode and pull yourself out and see the full screen is being shared on a different place. So lots of awesome options that you can pick from that have to do with sharing screens. And a lot of people don't even realize all these awesome things are there. Now I want to talk about whiteboards. The whiteboard is a way for you to share what you are writing on your screen with your students without having to share your screen and have a different app running a whiteboard on your screen, which sometimes I do because I want to write on Chrome or something like that. And I have this like extension that writes on the web page. But you can also write. Now I have, as part of my setup, I have a tablet top over here, and I don't usually have it plugged, but when I'm going to use it, I will pull it and plug and grab my pen so that I can do this. So when you activate a whiteboard, you can create a new whiteboard space. And the cool thing is you can actually allow the participants to access this after the meeting. You can decide if the participants can add it or not, or if they're just going to view it. So if you do it so that they can add it, they will be able to write on the whiteboard at the same time you can. So there you go. They're seeing the whiteboard now, right? Now, it's important that you're doing this from your, so you can't see me writing on the screen because I pulled my Zoom to my main screen where my actual pan thing actually works, supposedly. We'll see if that actually works. And then you can write on the screen, right? And when you do, they can see what you're writing. So it's a great way to share your notes with others. So going back here to the screen that I'm recording so that you can see the tools, you can draw, right? And you can see all the things that you're doing. You can change the thickness of your drawing. You can change the into a pen. You can change the color in which you're doing things. You can erase things that you don't want there anymore. You can add a sticky note. You can add a text box. You can red lines or arrows, right? All kinds of awesome things. And you can change the page too, right? So let's say, okay, I'm done with those notes. Let's go to a different one. And the participants can save that. If you were taking notes on the screen, they can literally save that. So it's a great tool for an instructor, right? And then you can actually hit to share those notes later on, and it will send that to somebody else. You can also export into a PDF all the pages of your notes. Uh, you can decide whether or not you can view other people who are in it at the same time, right? And that's really, really cool so that the people can actually interact with the whiteboard. Now, in order for them to use the whiteboard too, they have to be in an app that has the whiteboard feature. And when you're doing this from a browser, they don't. So you can have collaborative whiteboards with more than one person. But if you have two teachers with running the app and they both have the whiteboard running, then they can actually collaborate and write it together, and you can actually see both people writing at once. So whiteboards are really awesome, right? You can save those notes, export it to class. You can add shapes. Forgot to show that. All kinds of awesome basic shapes. Um, and so, yeah, you can also grab things and move them. I actually like that a lot. So this is a new feature that has been added recently, and it's a really, really awesome. And you can zoom in and zoom out. And if you zoom in on the watch side, it will zoom in for them as well. Really cool. So I take notes like this a lot and share with the rest of the class. The only time I don't like to use the whiteboard is when I want to write over a web page or something like that. And then I'll share my screen and just use an extension that I have to write there instead. Now, if you go under more, uh, you can also set up so that this will get broadcasted live to Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, which is not something a lot of teachers will end up using, but for privacy reasons. But if you were hosting a session and you wanted to do that, that's how you would do that. You would just have to set that up on your settings so that it connects to your YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch streaming app. And so that's another thing that is available there as well. Now, when you are not on full screen, the more also shows you the things that don't fit, like the stop and stop recording, the live transcript, and other features that were here but don't fit in the screen. So it all depends on how wide your screen is, right? So some of the stuff will end up collapsing to more as you make the screen smaller or bigger. So that is a walkthrough of some awesome Zoom capacities. I hope that this is incredibly helpful for you guys. Then we'll do a separate video that talks about Zoom settings that you can set outside of the Meet, either on when you're creating the meeting or on your general Zoom settings that are also important to look at. So I hope you found this helpful.